August 11, 2025, a day that will reshape American trade and global economics. On this date, a decision was made that will be studied for generations, marking a turning point in the nation's approach to international commerce. The Supreme Court has struck down the Trump-era tariffs, fundamentally altering U.S. trade policy and sending shockwaves worldwide. This landmark ruling not only reverses years of controversial economic measures, but also signals a dramatic shift in how America engages with its trading partners. For years, tariffs defined prices, jobs, and international relations. They shaped the cost of everyday goods, influenced where companies built factories, and even determined the tone of diplomatic negotiations. Today, that era ends, opening the door to new possibilities and challenges. The court's decision challenges presidential power over trade, reasserting Congress's role in taxation and commerce. By doing so, it restores a crucial balance between the executive and legislative branches, reminding the nation of the constitutional framework that underpins American democracy. This isn't just a legal story. It's about the price of goods, the fate of jobs, and America's place in the world. Families may soon notice changes at the checkout line, while workers and business owners brace for a new economic landscape. The ripple effects will be felt in every corner of the country. Allies and rivals alike are recalibrating as the ruling signals the end of a contentious period of trade wars and diplomatic strain. International markets are reacting, and governments are reassessing their strategies, knowing that America's approach to trade has fundamentally changed overnight. The central question: how much power should one person have to tax Americans through trade? This debate has raged for decades, but today the Supreme Court has drawn a clear line, emphasizing the importance of checks and balances in government. The court's answer: not this much. By limiting unilateral action, the justices have reaffirmed the principle that no single leader should wield unchecked authority over the nation's economic destiny. The verdict rebalances power in Washington, setting a precedent that will echo for decades. Legal scholars and policymakers alike will study this decision as a defining moment in the ongoing evolution of American governance. As the world reacts, the future of American trade is suddenly wide open. New alliances may form, old disputes may fade, and the rules of global commerce are up for negotiation once again. The Supreme Court's ruling is not an end, but the start of a new chapter in U.S. economic history. The decisions made in the coming months will shape the nation's prosperity, influence global markets, and define America's role on the world stage for years to come. To truly grasp today's Supreme Court decision, we first need to understand tariffs, a tax placed on imported goods, often used as a tool to protect domestic industries or to pressure foreign governments into changing their policies. Tariffs can make foreign products more expensive, giving an advantage to local businesses, but they can also raise prices for consumers and disrupt global supply chains. Historically, Congress held the exclusive power to set tariffs, carefully debating and passing laws that shaped America's trade relationships. But as the world economy grew more complex, Congress gradually handed some of this authority to the president, allowing for swift action during economic or national security crises. The Trump administration took these presidential powers further than ever before, invoking national security to justify sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of Chinese goods. This marked a dramatic shift in how trade policy was enforced. By bypassing Congress, these actions triggered a wave of global retaliation. Other countries responded with their own tariffs on U.S. exports, escalating tensions and sparking what became known as a trade war. The result was felt across the country: higher costs for American businesses, uncertainty for farmers and manufacturers, and a climate of escalating economic conflict that rippled through local communities. The legal authority for these sweeping actions came from decades-old laws, originally intended for emergencies, but their use on such a massive scale was unprecedented and controversial. The controversy wasn't just about economics or trade, it raised fundamental questions about the balance of power in America. Who truly gets to decide the nation's trade policy, Congress or the president? The trade war's impact was widespread, hurting businesses and consumers on all sides. It fueled years of legal challenges, political debates, and uncertainty for workers, families, and entire industries. With so much at stake, a Supreme Court showdown became inevitable, as the nation questioned the true limits of presidential power over trade. Today's ruling is the culmination of that long-running conflict, setting a new precedent for how America handles trade disputes. The era of unilateral tariff wars is over, ushering in a new chapter for American trade policy and global economic relations. The Trump-era tariffs were not just a sudden policy shift, they were built on decades-old legal foundations. These tariffs relied on two key laws that gave the president significant authority over trade policy. The first was Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act, a law originally designed during the Cold War to let the president act if imports threatened national security. The second was Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, which targeted unfair foreign trade practices and gave the president broad powers to respond. Section 232 allowed the president to impose tariffs if imports were seen as a threat to national security, a definition that was stretched to include steel and aluminum, even though these industries had long operated in a global market. Section 301, meanwhile, was used to address what the administration called unfair trade practices, especially with China. This led to tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in goods, affecting everything from electronics to everyday household items. Critics argued these laws were never intended for such sweeping use, and that Congress's constitutional power to tax was being dangerously delegated to the executive branch. Supporters, on the other hand, insisted the president was simply using the tools Congress had provided to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition. The debate quickly became a national flashpoint. Was this bold action necessary to defend American interests? Or was it an example of executive overreach that set a risky precedent? Legal scholars, business leaders, and some lawmakers warned that these laws were being pushed far beyond their original intent, raising concerns about the balance of power in government. For example, could a trade imbalance with a close ally like Canada really be considered a national security threat, or was the law being misapplied? The fundamental question emerged: should one person, even the president, control the power to tax through trade policy, or should that authority remain firmly with Congress? This dispute set the stage for a historic legal and political battle, one that would test the limits of presidential power and reshape the future of American trade policy. The legal fight against the tariffs was led by a coalition of businesses, from small importers to global corporations. Their argument: the president had exceeded the authority Congress granted, turning temporary powers into sweeping, unchecked control. The key case, American Institute for International Steel v. United States, challenged not just the tariffs but the constitutionality of the laws behind them. Plaintiffs argued Congress can't hand over its core power to tax without clear limits. Lower courts hesitated, often deferring to the president on national security, but the economic stakes kept the challenge alive. The core issue, taxation without representation, and whether the executive could act as both lawmaker and enforcer. The Supreme Court took up the case, recognizing the profound constitutional questions at stake. The outcome would redefine the balance of power in Washington. Today, that balance has shifted. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that using Section 232 for broad tariffs was an unconstitutional delegation of Congress's power. Chief Justice Roberts wrote, "The power to tax is entrusted to Congress, the most accountable branch." The court found that national security had become a limitless justification, letting the president regulate the economy unchecked. Section 232 isn't gone, but its use is now tightly limited to clear, direct security threats, not broad economic policy. The steel and aluminum tariffs are invalidated. Future tariffs face strict scrutiny. On China tariffs, the court sent the case back for tougher review, casting doubt on unilateral trade actions. Justice Gorsuch's dissent warned the court was overreaching, but the majority's decision stands. Billions in tariffs lose their legal basis overnight, forcing a reset of U.S. trade policy. The rules of American trade have been rewritten. The Supreme Court's ruling doesn't just change trade, it shifts the political landscape. Presidential power is curbed. Congress must now take the lead on tariffs and trade. Lawmakers can no longer avoid tough debates. Any new tariffs will require open negotiation and explicit approval. This could mean more collaboration or more gridlock as trade policy becomes a battleground in Congress. Lobbyists and industries will shift their focus to Capitol Hill, changing how trade decisions are made. Future presidential candidates must now explain how they'll build consensus, not just act unilaterally. The decision is a win for checks and balances, reaffirming that no branch holds absolute power. The fallout will reshape American politics for years to come. The economic impact is immediate. Tariffs drop, costs fall for businesses and consumers. Prices on cars, appliances, and groceries could decrease as import costs shrink. Farmers and manufacturers may regain access to foreign markets as retaliatory tariffs are lifted. Some domestic industries, once shielded by tariffs, now face tougher competition and possible job losses. Globally, the decision is met with relief. Trade partners welcome a return to stability and rules-based commerce. The ruling could revive international cooperation and strengthen institutions like the WTO. The debate now shifts to how America will protect its industries, through negotiation, not unilateral tariffs. The Supreme Court hasn't solved every trade problem, but it's changed the game. Trade experts call this the most significant judicial intervention in U.S. trade policy in a century. Dr. Evelyn Reed of the Peterson Institute says the ruling ends executive-led protectionism and restores legislative control. The court hasn't removed the president's tools, but it's put a safety on them. Future tariffs require clear, immediate security threats. This shift should prevent trade wars based on vague justifications. Dr. Reed predicts a period of adjustment. Some domestic producers will struggle, but the overall economy will benefit. Removing tariffs lowers costs, reduces inflation, and reopens export markets. The key now is to help displaced workers, not revive protectionism. The debate over trade isn't over. It moves to Congress, where solutions must be crafted through law and diplomacy. Competing with state-subsidized industries abroad remains a challenge, but the path forward is now legislative, not unilateral. This is a return to stable, traditional economic statecraft. Today marks a turning point, not an end. The Supreme Court's decision is a political and economic earthquake. The era of unilateral, sweeping tariffs is over. Congress and diplomacy now take center stage. The shift will echo for years, affecting everything from global relations to the price of everyday goods. Some industries will struggle, but many will benefit as trade barriers fall. America's role in the world, and the balance of power at home, has been redrawn. The court hasn't answered every question, but it's forced a national conversation about economic identity. The choices made now will shape America's future for a generation. One thing is certain, after today, the world of trade will never be the same.